I feel like fighting games are the last or the final frontier of any gamer's life. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Personality, and today we're going to be talking about my beginner experience in fighting games. But, question of the day, what is your favorite fighting game? For me, I love Guilty Gear Accent Core XXR. Yes, that's a hell of a name to say. I just love how fast paced it is, how action based it is. It really just feels like a perfect introduction of Guilty Gear. And when you descend into the other parts of this franchise, it's just an amazing place to start. Although any place to start makes sense. So my experience as a new fighting game player began with Smash. Smash is a relatively frustrating game that I do not even want to talk about at this moment, but there are some things that I think beginners don't necessarily hear when they're starting to pick up the fighting game genre. Necessarily, you could get this information from forums such as Reddit or other places on the internet, but this is my beginner experience to somebody who has yet to be or is still a beginner. Well, some misconceptions I had that eventually I ironed out and fully understood. So first things first, you will lose a lot. Now, I think this is a statement that is heavily, and when I mean heavily underrated in the fighting game community, I mean like it's possibly never understood. You will lose a lot. Like, I'm not saying that you're gonna lose, okay, you're playing 5 matches, you're gonna win 3 and lose 2. You're gonna be playing 10 matches, you get 7, you lose 3. Nah, you might be playing 10 matches straight in a row and you lose all 10. And that's not necessarily because you're a bad player or perhaps you lack the fundamental understandings of the basics of the game. That may be true. That part may definitely be true. But you've also got to consider that you are playing people who have about 3 console generations worth of experience. A lot of these franchises are old. Street Fighter is like 30 years plus. Guilty Gear is 30 years plus. Mortal Kombat, Tekken, all of these fighting games are pretty old. And even if it is, let's say, a new IP, it's like DNF Duel, even if it is a relatively new franchise starting, people can generally tend to translate some of the experience that they had from previous fighting games that they played into the ones that are currently popular. So you will lose a lot. And I think a lot of the times people have this notion that I'm not gonna lose that much. I'm not that bad, right? Am I just the worst player online? Aren't there people who are worse than me? And that's mostly because of the fact that you don't have the fundamentals down, or you are not able to recognize punishable things that your opponent is doing. You're not able to recognize possible flaws in their strategy. Maybe you don't even know how to execute your character's strategy. So that's something that you have to bear in mind. You will be absolutely destroyed. But the biggest loss that could happen to you on a fighting game is when you lose and you don't learn a thing from that interaction. I think recording your matches, most fighting games have the option to record the match, or the console could record the footage. You should be reviewing that footage if it is that you want to get better at fighting games, because of the fact that there are going to be very unorthodox investments to getting better. Let's take an RPG, for example. You could lose over and over and over, and then you just press continue, and then you look up a quick guide, and they're like, oh, that's the equipment you're using still? Please swap it out. There's a new blade over there that does actually plus 30 damage on this particular boss. You go there and immediately a problem is solved. Unfortunately, that is not the case with fighting games, or rather, that's not easily the case with fighting games. Most of the time, you are going to actually have to look at top players play the game. You're going to have to be labbing combos for hours, not necessarily hours in a day, but like the cumulative hours over time is going to show you how much you just dedicated sometimes to just one combo. And you're also going to have to pay attention to what people call the neutral game. Now, learning the neutral game is all about first learning not to be a button masher. Imagine fighting games as fighting in real life. Now imagine if somebody was just flailing around punches, don't care, they're just like swinging their hands everywhere. Guess what? That person is going to get punished for that sort of strategy quite easily. Same thing applies in fighting games. You have got to be looking at how the pros approach situations, how they deal with enemies that are possibly not too aggressive or too aggressive. Learning the neutral game is key. That involves you doing things that you may not have to do in other games, and possibly that prior experience that you have from other games may not be able to save you here. It's all about dedication, repetition, discipline. Fighting games are serious because they come from a time where most likely this was somebody's everyday after work or after school activity where they're just down and they're just pressing combos, they're just getting better, and that is something that you have to apply as a beginner. The truth is, learning from others on how to play a fighting game is one of the first pivotal steps you're going to have to take as a beginner. Next up, we're going to have you seek out FGC societies. I said I wasn't going to talk about Smash, but I'm going to bring up this point. I remember trying to learn Sheik on Smash. Sheik is a very difficult character, and especially where I didn't have the finger dexterity at the time, I don't think it was best for me to play Sheik. However, I was able to play Sheik at a level that would be considered vastly improved because of the fact that I sought out communities. There's a Sheik Discord that you could join, and they have basic rundowns, flowcharts, guides, and everything whatsoever that you may need in order for you to improve your Sheik gameplay. There's also the top player, Void, who is possibly considered one of the best, if not the best, Sheik in Smash. He made guides. He streams his gameplay as a Sheik. And guess what? Seeking out that society, asking Void these questions directly generally helped out in my approach as playing Sheik. The one thing that I absolutely adore about the fighting game community is how quick they are to help out new beginners or new players of a specific game or of a specific character. There's generally these experts who are always looking at things changing through patch notes, changing through the meta evolving, changing through new discoveries that players are making on the go. I think fighting games on a whole are like essentially a social experience. When you look at all these big events that are hosted in honor of fighting games, what is it? It's at the end of the day, first and foremost, a social experience. Next up, I want to talk about habitual learning. So I mentioned at the beginning, the worst loss that you can incur when playing fighting games is to come out of a match, you're totally salty, and you take nothing away. Habitual learning is going to affect your fighting game performance. It is a case where you're going to have to recognize, okay, you spam this in neutral, this is not a good option. You do this and this is highly punishable. You, for some reason, when you're feeling unsafe, you start to jump a lot. That's a habit that you have to take out and work on. This is a key point because it all feeds back to the fact that you have to watch the replays and watch the pros at work. So you actively see what is making you lose these matchups, and then you take the actual solution and apply it. It's going to have to be a mental note in your head not to do this when you're actually starting off. And then, of course, you've still got to factor in what is it that I'm actually supposed to do. But that is the beauty of these games. They're ever evolving, and overall, the changing aspect of it has to keep you on your toes. And this is just a bonus note. Please, if you're now starting off a fighting game, play everyone. Everyone always emphasizes the need to find a main in the beginning. I don't think you're going to get good immediately. It may be an investment of a month for some. It may be an investment of 3 months. It may be an investment of a year for some. But the point is, you're going to have to get accustomed, or you should get accustomed to what every character can do. Is this a character that grabs a lot? Is this a character that's a rush down? Is this character a bait and trick character? What exactly are you getting out of the matchup every time you approach? And then I think once you have a wider understanding of what each character portrays, then you have an easier time picking a main. Picking a main is important in the long run, but in the short run, it's something that you don't have to concentrate too hard on. But that was my beginner experience. I still consider myself an extremely noobish beginner or player of fighting games. But the beauty of it all is that there's an opportunity to learn. And honestly, it's becoming possibly my second favorite genre of games to play because of how intense and how social it can get. One day I just want to attend Evo. I'm not going to put out that aspiration yet that I need to win an Evo. I just want to really go to Evo, take in the scenery, take in the whole vibe of that area. And, it's just a great experience that I think many games don't create. But if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to comment what's your favorite fighting game below. And I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay gaming.